God, I love honesty. I love me some honesty. Love it. And there's no better way to get some honesty than with an anonymous poll. I mean, granted, you can get some craziness sometimes, but for the most part, an anonymous poll amongst respectable people, that's going to give you some hardcore honesty. NHL Player Poll on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. All right, welcome in. I don't know what happened to our intro there. Seems like we are severely affected by the nor'easter coming across the northeast right now. Welcome into the Hockey Talk Show. Big topic of discussion tonight is going to be the NHL Player Poll. This is done just a few times a year. Actually, I think there's one big one. They do it a couple other times. I don't think they really release the results to us. But it's done a couple of times during the year, and it's really refreshing to me because it gives you this honest standpoint about where the league is at, what the players are thinking, what they're talking about, who they really think is the best, who they're fearful of playing against. You know, it really gives you this wonderful breakdown of just where the league is. And there's no better person to determine, you know, what's going on in the National Hockey League other than the National Hockey League players. You know, the guys that are in it day in and day out. And the anonymity of this poll allows them to be honest. It allows them to say, you know, look, this is what we think. You know, this is who we think is the fastest player. This is who we think is the best player. This is who we think is the best coach. Without any repercussion, which is, you know, in essence, your best opportunity to get some honesty. All right, welcome in those of you who are watching on Facebook and YouTube. Remember, hit the thumbs up right away. We're doing thumbs up at the top of the show from now on. If you have a question or you want to talk about something, let me know in the comments below. This is going to be a fun show because it's the player poll, but then I also want to get your guys' opinion on what these players are saying. So let me know in the comments below if you're watching, where you're watching from. Austin, welcome into the show. YouTube, Facebook, everything. Thanks, guys, for all the support. We're going to go extensively through the poll here and analyze all the answers. But first, I want to talk about Taylor Hall quickly here. 26-game point streak for Taylor Hall. He has been unbelievable as a New Jersey Devil this year. We say it a lot, but it takes a little bit of time for players to settle in. Usually the first year, whether it's a trade, I think especially if it's a trade, or even if it's free agency, you know, there's a period of adjustment for these players. You know, I mean, it's a new place of work. It's, you know, new teammates. And players are creatures of habit. You know, they really are creatures of habit. So it's an adjustment for all these guys. And as we've seen with a lot of free agent signings and a lot of trades, it's that second year where you really you're able to come into your own. And that's what Taylor Hall has done in year two of this transition over to the New Jersey Devils. And boy, oh boy, has it been great for not only Taylor, but the New Jersey Devils. I mean, just phenomenally done. Phenomenally done. He looks comfortable. He's leading this team. Again, like we said, it was Gibbons up in the early part of the season. You know, it was Gibbons really who was leading the way early on for the Devils. But 26 points. I mean, 26 games with points. It's unbelievable. I think he's halfway there to breaking Gretzky's record. Does Gretzky have a 52-game point streak? It's pretty safe to assume that, actually. Now that I think about it, it's safe to assume that Gretzky holds the record for anything that you're talking about. Guy's a monster. Powerhouse. Absolute powerhouse. But he deserves some mention because what he's doing, and I know he missed a couple of games during this run here, but regardless, I think that really doesn't matter. You missed 3 games. That's fine. I just think that you should still be recognized for a continuous game point streak. And that's what he's got. So congratulations to him. Taylor Hall doing a great job, and Jersey really just well on their way to having themselves a nice little run here for the playoffs. At one time, I thought they were going to be the guys to fall off a little bit, but they haven't. They really haven't, and they found a way to make this run pretty decent for themselves. And it'll be interesting to see what they do in the playoffs this year. Take a look outside. This is outside the Hockey Talk Show studios right here. It's a view of the out the back of my house downstairs. This was taken just moments ago. That's the nor'easter that we're dealing with right here in the Northwest. So I don't know where you guys are tuning in from or how you're consuming the show. I see, Danny here from Connecticut. Danny, how's it going over there with you guys in the storm? We got a nice little, we got a little layer of sleet underneath this snow right here. We're living Canadian style right now. This is how Eddie V and the whole crew up north feels, like all the time. I want to talk about the Backus suspension. Am I the only one that thinks 3 games was way too much? I think for the league this year, we've had an unbelievable amount of. I don't want to say this. I don't want to come off sounding too critical here. Not that I'm against criticizing the league, but I don't know. I feel like there's been a little bit of inconsistency in some areas. Most notably, the obvious one is the goalie interference reviews. Those have been wildly inconsistent. Coaches complaining all the time, although I think for the most part they're just complaining when the goals go against them. When the calls go for them, they don't really seem to care all that much. But when it goes against them, then they're pretty upset about everything. But I feel like even with some of the suspensions, like I think most notably, it was another Bruin in Brad Marchand, where I think he really had a little bit of intent to injure and didn't get nearly as harsh of a sentence as I thought he was going to get. I thought he should have gotten a double-digit suspension, and he didn't. And then he was allowed to play in the All-Star game. And for those of you that stuck with the Hockey Talk Show from the beginning, you know that I was thoroughly pissed about that. I didn't think he deserved to be at the All-Star game whatsoever. And I didn't think that he should have only gotten 5 games. Now, the Backus one was odd in that, at first look at it, at full speed, like, it doesn't look great. It really doesn't look all that great. It's very peculiar because the puck is nowhere near, the hit that happens on Franz Nielsen. I mean, nowhere near. You can make an argument that he's finishing a check there a little bit, but I don't know. And he was on his way to the bench. It just seemed like he had really taken an extra second or two to get rid of the puck. Franz Nielsen is I'm talking about. 3-game suspension being too much. I could see that. But again, it goes back to when I said about inconsistencies. It's just Brad Marchand only gets 5 and then Backus gets 3. I mean, Danny, I see your point. I get it. Like, it doesn't make sense. If you're going to only give Marchand, who's a dirty player, even though technically he's not a repeat offender, 5 games instead of 10, I don't know. And then you give Backus 3. I'm not saying that here's the thing. Let me wrap it all up for you, Danny. 3 games I don't think is too much if you're trying to get rid of this from the game, if you're trying to take a hard stance. But you can't give Backus 3 and then give Marchand 5. It doesn't make sense. Because if you really put the two together and you kind of like equate it together, then Marchand should have gotten like 12. if you're going to give Backus 3 for this hit, if that makes any sense. You know, I still can't help but shake my head that the Oilers traded Hall. Hall for the Hart. Here's the weird thing about the Oilers, and everybody comments about their drafting. They've drafted just fine. I mean, outside of their firsts, they haven't. Their drafts have been awful. From after the first pick up, terrible drafting, an awful scouting department, really, really awful. And I blame Craig McTavish wholeheartedly. Craig McTavish is a big part of this problem in the Oilers organization. And there's a bunch of others that are big problems with the Oilers. But look at their trade history. Their trade history is abysmal. Case in point, they could have drafted Matthew Barzal, and they didn't. So, I mean, yeah, you look at it and go, how come they had 7 first-round draft picks and they're not anywhere? Well, look at their trade history. Their trade history is awful. They've had a terrible history of making deals. So I think that right there alone just is evidence enough that this, that's how an organization gets awful. They make bad trades. All right, let's get right into the NHL Player Poll. I'm super excited about this. There's several different categories that we're going to talk about. We're going to bring it up on the big screen here for you guys so that you can take a look at it. And I would love to know what your thoughts are on all of these. So you're going to have to jump in quick here with the comments if you want to weigh in on this, because we're going to be moving through the slides pretty quickly, but I'll give you my opinions on it as well. So there's 5 answers for every single one of the questions that was asked. And like I said, like, for instance, like, this is why the NHL Players Association poll is better than the Oscars. It's honest. Like, it is honest. You get a real sense of honesty. Nobody has to sit there and go, well, I picked this one or I picked that one, or politicking or anything like that. It's just hardcore honesty. Let's go through it. Who's the league's fastest skater? I was surprised by this. Connor McDavid coming in at 81%. Grabner in second place with 3.6%. So only 78%, trailing by 78% was Michael Grabner. Nick Leddy at third. Fourth, Dylan Larkin, and Chris Kreider at fifth. Larkin, Kreider, also super fast guys. Really, really fast dudes. Nick Leddy is fast, and I have no doubt that Connor McDavid is the fastest player in the National Hockey League, but the thing with this one is I would love to see this race. Like, who wouldn't love to see this race? And thus lies the fault of the NHL All-Star Game, because although it's wonderful and you do have to have a representative from every team go and all this and that, fastest skater had Josh Bailey in it this year. You know what I mean? Like, fastest skater had, I forget, there was a couple other guys where I was like, what the hell? But this is the matchup that you want to see. McDavid, Grabner, and if you can get Leddy in there, great. Larkin, yes, like, I would love to see these 5 guys go at it head to head, all conditions being equal. My one issue with this one, too, is, and I might be making this up, but I'm pretty sure or fairly certain that at some point early on here this year, Edmonton played the Islanders, and I believe Nick Leddy caught up to Connor McDavid. I don't know if I'm dreaming that up, but I'm pretty sure that happened. If anybody remembers that, let me know. I'm pretty sure that happened. Not to say, like, again, McDavid could have been a little bit later on in the shift. There could have been things there, but still, undoubtedly, I felt Connor McDavid had lightning quick speed until I saw that play, and then I thought to myself, hang on a second. So that is, by all accounts, the fastest skater. Evander, where's Hall, Duchesne, Cogliano, maybe? I don't know. Hall is pretty fast. But again, this is what I love about this. This comes from the guys who skate against these guys every day. These are the fellow players that are chasing these cats. So there you go. Which goalie is the most difficult to score on? Carey Price, 41%. Jonathan Quick coming in second. Pekka Rinne third. Sergei Bobrovsky fourth. And Braden Holtby fifth. Can't really argue with this all that much, right? I mean, you can't really argue with any of these. These are just how the players feel. I'm surprised Lundqvist isn't a little bit more on this list. But I would argue that Braden Holtby is definitely a better goaltender and has been for a little while over Lundqvist. Bobrovsky, I'm a little surprised, is on the list. That's a little surprising to me. But maybe his size and the way he really gets out there and is aggressive, perhaps that's part of the appeal of Bobrovsky. But Carey Price, undoubtedly number one, with time to spare in this race, is not surprising to me. But the shame of it is he's on one of the worst teams in the league. Like, that's the heartbreaking part about that one. He's on one of the worst teams in the league. Moving along. Who's the most difficult player to play against? Sidney Crosby just edging out Connor McDavid. You're going to see these two go head-to-head in a couple of categories here, with everybody obviously feeling like the torch was passed from Gretzky. Well, I always thought the torch was passed from Gretzky to Jagr, and then maybe Jagr to Crosby, and now it looks like it's going to go from Crosby to Connor McDavid. But as far as difficult players to play against, I have a hard... I mean, there are some agitators, and there are some great defensive players, but no doubt about it, Sidney Crosby is an all-around player. Like, he's got a little bit of everything. He's always around the net. His hands are great around the net. He's got decent speed. He's got a good breakaway. He's got good touch. He passes really well, and he comes back and he back checks after all of that. So being a tough player to play against is not just a great defensive player, but a great offensive player as well. And you really can't argue with Sidney Crosby all that much. We love to hate him, right? We love to hate him, but let's be honest with each other. The guy can flat out play. And Connor hasn't been all that wonderful this year, so I'm surprised he came in second. It just goes to show you how much improvement needs to come to the Edmonton Oilers. Patrick Kane in at number 3. Another one of those guys that just goes and goes and goes. Shea Weber coming in 4th, 4.1%, and Andrei Kopitar coming in with 3.2%. Bergeron is tough to play against. Uncle Buck, excellent point. Patrice Bergeron is one of my favorite players to watch. Again, when you talk about complete games, he's got it. And I would put him in a little bit in the higher category than Crosby when it comes to character. Because, you know, let's be honest. Bergeron does not cry as much as Crosby does. That was always the worst part of his game. And you know what? I always felt, and President Party included, he gets a bad rap for that because Gretzky used to complain a ton too. But for some reason, I hate it more when Crosby does it. I don't know why I give Gretzky a pass on that, but I can see my own flaws, and that's definitely one of them. I hate when he cries. And you go back and you look at Gretzky, and Gretzky cried a whole hell of a lot, but nobody seemed to mind. Really, nobody seemed to mind. All right, moving along in the categories here, we're looking at the NHL Player Poll 2017. Who is the toughest player? Ryan Reeves, 44%, a 30% jump on number 2, Milan Lucic. Again, it's surprising that the Edmonton Oilers, you know, McDavid, Lucic, you're going to see a few Oilers in this thing. For them to be as bad as they are. Zdeno Chara, 3rd, Michael Haley, 4th, and Matt Martin, 5th. Out of this whole entire list, honest to goodness, Michael Haley is my favorite out of these 5. I just think his game is so underrated. Like, if I was Michael Haley, I'd fire my agent, publicist. Like, most players don't have publicists, but I would hire a publicist if I was Michael Haley because he gets zero credit. And he's making not as much as he should be making because as far like let's take 4 and 5 right here. His game is just as good, if not a little bit better than Matt Martin's. And here's proof in this poll right here. Yet Matt Martin, and I don't really know, I'm going to go ahead and back this up and look this up really quickly as we're talking about it. Matt Martin, I would guess, makes about 500 to maybe $1 million more than Michael Haley. I might be wrong about this, but I'm going to look it up right now. It just has that feel like he just gets no love. There's no respect. There's no love for Michael Haley, and his game is so strong. And I give respect to these tough guys that have found a way to stay in this league because it has not been easy to stay in the league as a tough guy. Yet Michael Haley has definitely carved out a place for himself down there in Florida. Works really good with some of their skilled forwards. Really, really good. All right, I'm over here at Cap Friendly. Let me see. Michael Haley. Haley makes 800,000 and Matt Martin makes $2.5 million. Your Honor, I rest my case. Michael Haley, if he got some more press and some more pub, could be making Matt Martin money, and he's not. Find it interesting that Ryan Reeves, and again, you talk about tough guys who are effective, and I always love his size. I mean, God, this guy's just big. He's just big and intimidating. Moves from Pittsburgh to Vegas, and I wonder if that doesn't affect Pittsburgh a little bit. I liked Ryan Reeves on Pittsburgh. I really did. Like, out of that whole trade, let's break this down for a second. This is pretty interesting to me because we talk about the Brassard deal and Pittsburgh winning that deal. And yeah, of course, rightfully so. That's so true. But let's not negate the fact that Vegas got tougher and Pittsburgh got softer in that deal. Like, that's pretty important. That's pretty important. That's going to become important in playoff games. When you're playing a team for 7 games in a row and that animosity builds, you know, in those series, and we start to see those things get a little nasty, that's when Ryan Reeves is really going to make a difference for the Vegas Golden Knights. To have somebody out there patrolling and protecting for you is definitely a big deal. And, you know, Pittsburgh gave that up. I think I even mentioned that at some point. Like, that is, again, you need Brassard. I get it. They're loading up on offense, but man, I like some toughness in the playoffs. Surprised that Wilson's not on there for the Caps. That is a little surprising to me. I wouldn't be surprised if he was like 6 or 7, though, on the list. We're taking a look at the overall NHL player poll, where the players will vote on what they think in several categories on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Moving along, who's the most underrated player? I could not disagree with this more. I think the most overrated player is Nicholas Backstrom, and he's not really even rated all that much. I don't understand why. I've never liked Nicholas Backstrom's game. When people say to me, oh, the Caps will never win with Ovechkin, my response is usually the Caps will never win with Nicholas Backstrom. Ovechkin keeps scoring a boatload of goals. Nicholas Backstrom's over there going, oh, look at my assists. Well, I can have a billion assists too if I was feeding Alexander Ovechkin a whole bunch. I don't know what it is, but I just don't like Nicholas Backstrom's game. I don't. I think he's soft. I think he's never really willing to go into the tough places. I think he is way overpaid. And honestly, and I hope you're with me at least on this one, I was really sick of seeing his stupid Geico commercial every 3 seconds for 2 years straight. It's driving me nuts. Best day of my life was when I realized they stopped playing that dumbass commercial about Nicholas Backstrom saving money on Geico insurance. Friggin' driving me crazy over here. Wold Wolf, Backstrom is better than Ovi. Oh my goodness. Come on. No way. No way. No way. Ovi is one of the best natural goal scorers in the game. Instant first ballot Hall of Famer. And would be a Stanley Cup champion if it wasn't for 19 dragging him down. I hate Nicholas Backstrom as a player. I'm sorry. I do. I do. Jaden Schwartz, by the way, I believe in, and I think should have shown up number 1 here on this list. He comes in second place. But you know what's interesting about this? We've seen 40%, we've seen 80%, right? Take a look at this here, though. Only 8.6% for Backstrom. So you can tell that this one was pretty split all around. And even though we only get the first 5 players, I'm sure there was a ton more here that deserves some mention. Wold Wolf, LOL, I'm just trolling. But Wilson is better than them both. Kucherov is on the list at number 3. That pleases Matt. I'm sure Austin likes that too. Alexander Barkov, I'm totally down with that. You can throw the entire Trocheck, Barkov, like you can throw a few Florida Panthers on there. Again, they're not going to get a lot of respect, and they certainly didn't when it came to ice conditions. But yeah, the Florida Panthers overall are underrated. We see the run that they're going on right now, and I think they're about to get a lot more respect than they had just a few weeks ago here in this season. So good for Barkov. And Ryan O'Reilly, I'm a little surprised. I don't think Ryan O'Reilly is underrated. I think he's rated, and I think he makes too much for what his role really is. Since he's gotten to Buffalo, he hasn't really been part of the solution to turn that organization around. He's been a continual part of the problem, which is nobody really stepping up there. I want to take this time to welcome in the NHL Red Light Hockey guys. We're in the Red Light NHL group again today. I saw my man Dustin before. There was a hilarious poll in the NHL Red Light group. Join up if you can. It's a really great group for hockey talk, which was who's the best general manager. And the fifth option was Jack Eichel, which I really got a wholehearted belly laugh out of that when I read that, because that's hilarious. Like Jack Eichel, it really is one of the general managers in the National Hockey League. Who's the best role model? Crosby coming in here, number one. Pretty good margin to beat out Jonathan Toews. I was surprised to see that wasn't closer. Jonathan Toews, to me, is one of the best character guys in the National Hockey League, and I thought he would have came in number one. Again, Crosby would be perfect to me if he didn't cry so much. But that doesn't mean that he's not still a good role model. I have a son. I have a daughter. If they get into the game, I am certainly going to be showing them clips of Sidney Crosby, and a very decent human being off the ice as well. So not really much of a problem with this, although I will say surprised that Jonathan Toews didn't win out, because I thought he would have been a smidge more respected. Patrice Bergeron, again, love his game. Another one that I would show my kids. Shea Weber, stand-up guy, and he's going to have to be moving forward in Montreal, especially when they slap the C on him. And Patrick Marleau. Matthew, crybaby Crosby. Again, Matt, I'm with you, and I'm guilty of this, but I don't know if you're just tuning in, but I said this moments ago. It's worth repeating. Gretzky cried just as much as Crosby did, yet nobody gives Gretzky a hard time, myself included. Gretzky cries just as much as Crosby does. And I sit there knowing both of them, and I go, why does Sidney have to be such a crybaby? It just bothers me more. I don't know what it is. It just bothers me more. Again, I wish I was a more complete human being, but I'm not. Which player would you select to start a franchise? Connor McDavid. But Matt, I don't want you to feel bad, Matt, because I'm with you. I don't know why we give Sid a harder time than Gretzky, but we all do. Me included. I do too. Like, it's so weird. I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, you know what? Maybe part of it is this. And you know, this is a good point. I just thought of this. Maybe part of it is because, you know, when Gretzky played, he had to deal with a ton more garbage than Sid. Even though Sid never had a Marty McSorley to protect him. So there's a counterpoint to the point I'm making right now. But even still, like, the game was harder. There was more grabbing, there was more pulling, there was more tugging. So maybe there was more reason for Wayne to complain. Whereas Sid's got far better rules, and there's still a whole ton of complaining going on. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why we're so angry with Sid. I can't tell. I feel like I should see a therapist about this. Because I'm with you, man. I hate that he cries so much. Here's a good point by Uncle Buck, and I'm curious about this. And we're going to talk about the draft coming up soon on one of these episodes of the Hockey Talk Show. Dahlin would be a nice starting piece, kid that's coming up in the upcoming draft. Interesting to see where that's at. But going back to this, Connor McDavid, you know, this would have been Sidney Crosby, and probably was if we went back and looked 5 years ago. This would have been Sidney Crosby number one. And, you know, for me, if you take age out of it, I'm still going to pick Sid over Connor. But right now, it's obviously Connor because, you know, he's younger. He's Sid, just younger. And I think he's going to be great, no doubt about it. And I don't know how you really argue a lot with this. The problem I do have with this is how the hell is Austin Matthews only at 5.8%? I don't think we give Austin Matthews enough credit for how great he is. Again, it's a different game. He's not going to razzle dazzle. He's not going to blow away with lightning speed. He's not going to do all these amazing tricks and things. But at the end of the day, I don't really care. I want goals and assists. And Austin Matthews is getting as many, if not more, than Connor McDavid. If I had a choice between Connor and Austin Matthews, I'm going to be honest with you. It's going to be, I'm not saying that I would pick Austin over Connor, but it wouldn't be 48-5. That's for damn sure. I wouldn't be so decisive to be like, oh no, Connor McDavid. Because I just don't think that that's fair to Austin Matthews. Because I like Austin Matthews' game. I like a guy around the net who knows how to sniff the puck out. Like, he finds the puck and the puck finds him. I just don't know. I just don't see that big of a separation between those two guys. I really, really don't. Now let's see here. Points so far for this year. Do I have this 2018 in front of me? 2017, 2018. Connor McDavid has played 66 games. He's got 30 goals and 50 assists. And where's Austin Matthews? Is he not in the top 50 of goal scorers? Is that possible? Or am I just missing his name? He's 59th. 28 goals, 22 assists with Austin Matthews for 50 points. So Austin a full 30 points below Connor McDavid to shut up my face as far as this season goes, at least. Connor definitely the better player point-wise for the Edmonton Oilers this year. But again, to defend myself a smidge, I would still consider Austin a little bit more just because of his game. I just think he's got more of that power forward game. And again, I don't know if I would pick Austin over Connor, but it wouldn't be that far away from me. That's just me. Which defenseman is the most difficult to play against? Erik Karlsson coming in at number 1, just edging out Drew Doughty. And what I like about this one is totally different style of game. Erik Karlsson's a problem because he's hard to catch and he's so offensively talented. Drew Doughty is just big and probably hurts a lot when he hits you. Shea Weber, because you got to get out of the way of that shot. Brent Burns, who's just great all around. Again, talk about underrated. I say Brent Burns should be on that list. And Victor Hedman for obvious reasons. Which forward is the most difficult to play against? Again, Crosby coming in here, number 1. Connor McDavid just behind him. Patrick Kane, Andrei Kopitar, and Patrice Bergeron. No surprise there. Who is the best team player? Despite all the crybaby antics, Sidney Crosby in at number 1. And again, this isn't a fan poll. This isn't a media poll. This is a player poll. So these are all the guys that are playing with Sid and against Sid. And this is really how they feel. He is the best team guy, despite all the crying. Taves 2nd, Patrice Bergeron 3rd, Kopitar 4th, and Jumbo Joe coming in 5th. What quality do you most appreciate in a teammate? Work ethic. I think that's it for everybody, right? You want to see the guy next to you working. Honesty is great, loyalty is wonderful, and respect as well, but I just want to see you trying. That's really what it comes down to. We don't need to get the results. We just got to put forth the effort. Malkin should be there for dealing with the tears. Yeah. Evgeny Malkin was, if they had a category of, who carries the most Kleenex with them for their teammate, Evgeny Malkin would definitely be 99.9% number 1. If you need to win one game, who's the number 1 player in any position you would want on your team? Carey Price, the only goaltender to pop on this list. And again, Sidney Crosby at number 1. And it just goes to show you how much respect there is for Connor McDavid out there in the league right now. Carey Price 3, Kane 4, and Karlsson 5. I like this one. Do you like the way points are currently awarded for a win, loss, in regulation? For a win or a loss in the regular season? The players like the way the game is. That's interesting to me. I do see a lot of respect and do understand the folks that want to have 3 points for a win. if you're going to have 3-point games, you might as well have 3-point games all the time. I'm not saying I really want that. I kind of go back and forth on it, but I understand people's feelings on that. There's a lot of debate on that. This I really love. Who would you like most to play for? How about Joel Quenneville coming in at number 1? That's got to make Coach Q feel good this year. Not much to feel good about with his team. And we're going to talk about the fact that still, here we are, March 7th, and not one coach has been fired in the National Hockey League. I can't believe it. But the dismal year that the Blackhawks have had, still, the players in the National Hockey League respect Joe Quenneville so much. And he gets there at number 1. John Cooper at number 2. Gerard Gallant, obviously having a ton of success. Having only been a head coach in 2 teams, that's an interesting selection for me that he's up there at number 3. Babcock at number 4. And Peter Laviolette at number 5. I honestly would have thought that Laviolette would have outpaced Babcock a little bit, but there it is what it is. I love this one. Which current assistant coach should be the next head coach? I'm surprised Lindy Ruff showed up so low on this list. DJ Smith at number 1 with the Leafs. Todd Reardon, number 2 with the Caps. Ulf Samuelsson, number 3 with the Hawks. Steve Ott, number 4 with the Blues. And Lindy Ruff, number 5. Those last 2 the most surprising because, again, I thought Lindy Ruff would have been a little bit higher on this list. Because to me, he's a head coach, and I'm still surprised that he's an assistant coach at this point. But I understand his desire to work. And 2, Steve Ott is still pretty young into this coaching game, and I'm surprised that he's gotten so much love. Which current player would be a great coach when they retire? How about Derek Stepan coming in at number 2? Again, it just goes to show you the respect that these players have for everybody. And Sid number 1, but only at 5.7%. So there's a whole ton of players that people think that could be good coaches when they retire. Sid, Stepan, Spezza, Cullen, and Taves. Cullen I could see happening pretty soon. Who's the best referee? Wes McCauley. Again, referees shouldn't stand out. Everybody would agree they're there to ref the game. They should disappear. It should be all about the players. Yet time and time again, we love the referees that do stand out. And Wes McCauley, because of his calls and the delays that he takes, the little pauses, he comes in at number 1. Kelly Sutherland at number 2. I thought Dan O'Halloran would have popped a little bit more than number 4. Tim Peel just in front of him. And Trevor Hansen in at number 5. Let's pick on some arenas. What is your favorite rink to play in? The Bell Center in Montreal. Number 1. United Center in Chicago. 2 of the bigger barns in the league right here. Madison Square Garden at number 3. That surprises me. Staples Center at number 4. And Bridgestone Arena at number 5. Good for Nashville for getting some respect. I hear the atmosphere down there is amazing. Out of all the places to go see a game, Nashville is one that I'm circling to hit pretty soon. Tampa is an easy one for me because I got some family down in Florida, and I might make that run in a couple of weeks when I shoot down there. But I really want to make a play at Nashville to go see it. And then Chicago as well, because I hear it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to play. Madison Square Garden, number 3. I'm be honest with you, I haven't really been there since the renovation. But having played at Madison Square Garden myself, I actually played in an all-star game there in high school. And having been there a bunch for other reasons behind the scenes, it sucks to me. I mean, it really does. When you step onto that ice, it's unbelievable. And, to be completely honest with you, so when I was in high school, I played in an all-star game, and we got to play at Madison Square Garden before a Ranger game. And the reason why I'm down on the rink is for everything but the actual ice itself. The room, the bowl, if you will, is incredible. I remember walking out of the tunnel and looking up at that ceiling and just the immenseness of the room. And again, I grew up an Islander fan, so, and I know how crummy that arena is. I've actually coached. I never played at the Coliseum. Did I ever play at the Coliseum? No, I never played at the Coliseum, but I coached at the Coliseum. And then I obviously worked for the Islanders, so I was in and out of there pretty much. And as dump as you can get, just dump. I'd be walking down the hall of the Coliseum, and I'd look over and just see water dripping down. I mean, just awful. But the Garden, when you step out onto that ice, I mean, it is one of the great feelings that I will never forget. Like things that literally take your breath away. If you've never been to the Grand Canyon is another example to this. And it kind of just goes to show you how amazing the Garden really is. The Grand Canyon, you see pictures of it. You actually go to the Grand Canyon and you look at it and you realize, oh my God, I am tiny. I am so small. It is just immense and it's pictures can't, you know, everybody knows what the Garden looks like. But when you step out onto the ice and you look up at the ceiling, and I mean, it's a feeling that I'll never forget. So it's amazing for that reason. And playing in New York has got to be just as good as playing in Montreal and Chicago. You know, these are all buildings that are big, have intense followings, deep, you know, original six teams. So I think that's where most of that comes from. The Garden, everything else, dump, awful. Not as bad as the Coliseum, but you know, and I don't know if it's still the same again. I don't know if the renovations have changed. I'm going to assume they have, but you know, visiting teams were dressing on folding chairs up until a few years ago at Madison Square Garden. So I'm not sure where the love comes from there. I mean, you know, it's cavernous. You got to walk really far to get from the locker rooms to the ice surface. You know, all that's, it's a lot of awful brick. They didn't really do much to make it look nice other than hang a couple of pictures. It's just not as romantic as you would assume when you're looking from the bowl, you know, when you get behind the scenes. So that's why I'm dumping on Madison Square Garden. On the ice, can't argue with it. Back in the dressing rooms, flat out awful. Let's get into ice conditions. Who's got the best ice? Montreal, 28%. Edmonton, 21%. They're loving that new Rogers place over there in Edmonton. I hear that is a great building to watch a game in. Winnipeg at number 3, XL Energy Center number 4, and Calgary at number 5. Is this a coincidence that these are all cold locations? I don't think so, because when you look at who has the worst ice, it's all warm locations and Brooklyn. So let's get into it. Bell's BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida, worst ice. The humidity down in Miami. I mean, it must be really hard to maintain that building. That's got to be difficult. Arizona, I don't know why. I mean, it's a dry heat. You always hear that in the desert. It's a dry heat. Barclays Center is awful just because they don't have the proper refrigeration underneath. Not a lot of people talk about that, but that's why that ice is so terrible. They refuse to. There's certain kind of piping that works better for cooling ice, and they don't have the better one. So that's why the Barclays Center sucks. Anaheim obviously going to be tough to maintain ice, and I'm a little surprised that Raleigh is gotten some bad marks. But again, South tends to be pretty humid. Which team, excluding your own, has the best fans? Blackhawks, number 1. Preds, number 2. No surprise after making their deep run. The Canadians in at number 3. Maple Leafs at 4. And the Jets at 5. I find that to be pretty interesting because most players, as we saw with Mike Green during the big trade deadline, did not want to go to Toronto because of the fans. A lot of the players kind of take their space away from the fans. And I'm surprised that some of the players in this poll felt otherwise. So Hawks, Preds, Canadians, Leafs, and Jets have the best fans. I think the Winnipeg Jets do have the best fans. They're pretty damn good. They're not fair weather fans at all, which is what's good about Winnipeg. There is more, including the 50th anniversary edition on who's the best player all time and so on and so forth. I'll leave that for you guys to explore on your own. That's going to wrap it up for the show for tonight. Quick picks here. Give me Calgary over Buffalo. Puck dropping in just about a half hour or so there. Battle of Pennsylvania. Give me the Philadelphia Flyers at home over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Give me the Vancouver Canucks without Brock Besser beating Arizona. Just 3 games tonight. All is quiet. I will see you guys on the next